My Black Life Matters. So I just wrote that one too.
Okay, so how this works, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to ask you a couple of questions that pertain to the book, and I guess some other question that pertains to you because you are such an interesting man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's high praise. I'm humbled.
So my name is Aisha Malone. I am a 5th grade ELA teacher. I'm also currently an entrepreneur. I am the owner of Rose Café, which is a reading cafe that is up and coming in the Roseland community. A little about Rose Café is that we are trying to bridge the gap of the literary resources that my neighborhood does not have. And that being that we're both our educators, we do know the importance of reading. So we just wanted to make it look a different way so that we can get a lot of people on board with it. Yeah.
I'm Rebecca Silverman. I'm the co-founder and creative director at Rose Café. I'm a former elementary school teacher. That's how Aisha and I know each other. And now I'm in school studying education policy. And just a little bit more about Rose Café. The motto is books, coffee, community. And our way of fostering community in these strange times is to host book talks virtually and promote books and have people watch us, engage with them, and engage with them as well. And then if you could introduce yourself, Michael.
Hi, my name is Mike Brown. I am the author of an amazing children's book series, What I Tell Myself, and the book in question, What I Tell, Mommy, Daddy, Please Teach Me. I'm also a former police officer, former military veteran, and currently anger management specialist. I teach nonviolent crisis intervention instruction. I teach also firearms and stuff like that. Teach people how to protect themselves against criminal events and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I told you were pretty.
Yeah, so we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Yeah. I guess we just wanted to start off first by asking what your inspiration was for this book and why you wanted to write it.
Well, all of my books are trauma influenced, and so being a person who is essentially, or more so, I should say, a mommy's had mommy issues, and becoming a father and getting married at such a young age, you know, you go through the traumas of not being prepared to be more than just a provider, to be a great partner, and the skills that you don't have often a derivative of what you weren't taught when you were younger, when you're more eager to learn certain things. And so, you know, in the Black household, you get the proverbial, you know, I put roof on the table, clothes on your back, you know, put a food on the table and you know, roof over your head. You don't have a pot to use a restroom in or a window to throw it out of, you know, and if I didn't do these things, I wouldn't, you know, I didn't love you. And so there's the gap between understanding responsibility and that in parents being so busy in their everyday lives, instead of just doing it, don't forget to teach us, because the things you don't teach us create the gaps, which are the insecurities that we will have to fight when you are long gone.
So with that being said, and it's the daily things that you're saying that we should do. And in your book, you talk, it kind of shows like bonding moments. Can you talk a little bit to us about like how those teaching moments, how can we put them together, the teaching moments and the bonding moments, where it doesn't look like it's always that we're teaching, but it's kind of like genuine, and it's not so much as I'm teaching you, it's just something that's authentic.
Well, see, if you understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a psychological theory of motivation that, you know, is coined by psychologist Abraham Maslow. The part of this book focusing on specifically love and belonging, those love and belonging needs, because, you know, the 5 levels: physiological, security, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. You know, you think about your favorite teachers, you know, and you all being teachers, you understand that very well, because I'm sure you have students that have latched on to you probably more than others. They fall in love with you in essence, and you may or may not know it, because of the things that you have taught them that give them that sense of I can do. Not that you're coddling or you're babying me, you're showing me something. And when I do it, I'm proud of that. And because you told me that, we bond together, possibly maybe more than you even know, because they don't get that at home. And so in the teaching them about, how to cook, giving them a motivation that I'm going to have a family, I'm going to need to feed them. So in you teaching me, or even if you don't know, in us learning together, we insulate that I belong. I have a sense of purpose. You're showing me love by action, which gives me in the esteem needs, the confidence to fail forward. Because when I did, when you were teaching me and I wasn't doing so good, you showed me that failure was a part of success, that's a part of learning. And so I can now have self-esteem and have more confidence. And so I think that's very important.
You took my next question right out of my mouth, because we thought it was interesting that you decided to put the Maslow's hierarchy even in the book at the end. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is, if you need to have the bottom before you can get the next layer. So at the bottom, so at the bottom, it's just like what you had mentioned earlier, like having food and shelter. And that's basically like the bare minimum that you need in order to get the next level. So if I was wondering if you could talk more about, why did you decide to put the actual triangle in the book?
Well, we don't get taught about Maslow's hierarchy of needs until you enter into a specialty. Typically, it's at the college level
Yeah,
where
that's what I did. Yeah.
you take your psych 101 or your psych classes and things like that. And because that's a part of the curriculum, you end up learning that. But think about that. How much child and adolescent psychological trauma have you gone through before you're ever exposed to something that affects you from birth to the dirt? Maslow is very essential, and a theory that can't be debunked. And in fact, when you enter into a profession where you're going to end up having to address other people or take care of other people's needs, you learn about Maslow, because it then begins to help you explain the motivations for behaviors. We typically, I taught criminology as an adjunct college professor. And typically you have a theory called rational choice theory, where it's option A, option B, and then, or choice A, choice B. You have options under those choices, and then you pick this option or this choice. And typically that's where the judgment is. Well, you knew what you were doing, you choices, you selected those choices, and that's that, and you should be held responsible. But there's very little focus on what motivated me to select this as the better choice, as opposed to you seeing this as a better choice. And that's where Maslow picks up. That's where we can learn about people with insecurities and why, self-esteem issues and why. Why is it hard for children when they fail? How the school system kind of treats those children when they fail versus those when they succeed, and how we can make that better.
Hey, you're taking my questions because you talk and you give it all out. Because I wanted to know, because on one of the pages you said, teach me how so that I don't lose. And so that's kind of like what you just said. Like, if we're not teaching them now, we lose. What do we lose?
Well, take for instance, Chicago, right? There's an African proverb that gets often quoted, and that's it takes a village to raise a child. In fact, you have a bunch of, educational establishments from daycares and beyond that use the heck out of that quote. But there's a quote that's not often addressed, and that's the child not embraced by the village will burn it to feel its warmth. And that is one thing that we are seeing in our communities, is that the children of the village that has not been embraced by the lessons that we have not learned, such as Maslow. They get the negative treatment by parents who often don't understand why they are motivated not to teach their children how to cook and how to clean. They just do it for them because it's something that has to be done. They don't understand how they're leaving the children out, and the children want love. They want that nurturing. And oftentimes you all as teachers you don't have to, but you end up filling that gap. And there's only so much that you can do, that because you're overwhelmed by having so many Maslow affected students, that you often, unbeknownst to you, some children get left behind and they feel neglected. They don't get it at school. They don't get it at home. They're not going to get in the criminal justice system. And so they burn the village to feel that warmth. And that's where the losing part comes in. And we become affected because we become unnecessary or unintended victims of this tragedy of not being taught the very thing that could release us from the blinders of bad narratives. I've said a lot.
No,
No,
you said it.
yeah. And so I guess I'm wondering, like, if this book, so it's a children's book, but I'm wondering who your intended audience is, if it is the children or their parents.
Well,
Good
I'm
question.
taking the road less traveled. You typically think about children's books being for children, but my children's books are all Trojan horses. Because one thing that I study that adults do, they typically get a book and they'll throw it to the child and say, here, read this, sit it down, Oprah's on. Or they'll watch whatever, they want to watch and just, use that book as a silencing tool. But oftentimes when you have issues with children, the parents are whom are usually addressed, because parents are the ones that know right and they're the parents and they're responsible. But I'm actually trying to turn the children positively on the parents to do a reverse healing. So, when a parent will say, well, I had a bad issue with a boyfriend or whatnot, I don't like myself. And then the child comes out with, like in my first book, you see here, what I tell myself, well, I like me. Not everyone will like me. That's okay. I like me. Or when you have, a child that sees mommy cooking and, well, mommy, can I learn how? No. Go back in and have a seat. I'm preparing dinner. I don't have time right now. Well, don't just cook. Teach me how. I'll need to feed myself somehow. A family I'll have someday to cook for them a million ways. And you think about it, because our children tend to make us better as parents. And so now you have this, not only did he rebut what I asked him to do, he gave me a logical reason that'll make me say, you know what? You are absolutely right. Come on in. And now that child feels like, hey, mommy showed me how. I belong.
Mr. Brown, so, and I'm listening to you talk, you are very knowledgeable. And I know wasn't one of my questions, but now I want to ask, like, what did you said you was a police officer, you said you taught. What did you go to school for?
My bachelor's is in criminal justice, was in 3 concentrations: criminal justice, psychology, and philosophy.
Okay. I just wanted to ask that topic, but then I did also want to know, because you brought it up to what I tell myself first.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted you to kind of talk to people a little bit about that theme of, because you only mentioned it once. You said it at the very end of the book, but because I kind of went through your Instagram and things like that, I know that's something that you are proud of. And I was wondering, like, why it come at the end, and then could you talk to some of our viewers about what that means?
Well, what I tell myself first, I've often seen affirmation books that mean well, but they don't really, it's kind of like giving a false sense of hope, like the whole, if you dream it, you can do it. Those of us adults are like, yeah, no, it's going to take a little bit more than that, because if all we had to do was dream and do it, then hey, we'd be more successful because our dreams told us so. And so I then began to look at real world affirmations, such as failure is a part of success. If I learn from the failure, what did I learn? We don't learn about failing as a good thing when we are younger. We are taught that failure is a bad thing, but we learn about positive implications or the positive aspects of failure when we become an adult, because we often fail as an adult, and it can be very demoralizing. And so I thought that, what a wonderful way to expose the child to the mindset of real world affirmations, so that when they're able to comprehend the things that become the source of bullying, which is often Maslow related issues, parents not paying attention to children and then taking it out on the other kids at school. If we attack those things, which are often the source of hurt, I am beautiful or handsome. Not everyone will think I am beautiful or handsome. I am beautiful or handsome to me. If we begin to attack those now, that you would see bullying kind of go down a little bit, because you would start to build up the self-esteem, and people would actually start to embrace and recognize difference, because that's a part of reality.
So speaking about difference, we noticed that all the characters were different races, different families. What what was your intent behind that?
Well, being a Black author and having my Black experience, I will definitely tell you this. And my mom, even though, you know, I've had traumas from her, my mom, my grandmother, great grandmother, great great and great great grandmother, I was live, you know, love to enough to know them all. They never taught me to see race. They taught me to see character. And in my experience, having been in the military and law enforcement and having had both good and bad aspects of people of all races, I wanted my books to create to be a representation of the realism of the fact that Maslow is not a Black issue, it's not a white issue, it's a human issue. You know, that just because there are Black kids that face these issues, there are white kids that face these issues too. Hispanic, there are other kids that face these issues. You know, I work at a shelter that has teens with, you know, at Aunt Martha's. And it's a DCFS kind of last chance shelter, so to speak. And there are kids of all races, teenagers of all races that are there. And in my experience, I saw that I don't want to leave anyone out because these issues are more global than one's perspective would lead them to believe.
And I don't know. And we was before you hopped on, we was talking about the book and the characters. I'm like, yeah. So he introduced us to a lot of different cultures. But then when we turned to it, then we saw the Black kid playing basketball. And then we saw like the Asians doing something that maybe be cliche to, you know. And I was just wondering, was that on purpose? Like even, you know, thanks for putting a lot of different characters in there, but was it on purpose to identify the cultures with what most identify them with?
Actually, you just brought that to my attention. I have an illustrator who's actually one of my primary graphic designers for all of my books, Zoe Renucci. And what I do with my illustrators, I give them the idea of what I'm looking for, but I give them a lot of creative leeway to go where they want to go. And that's something that she did, which in my opinion was great because she's in tune with kind of the stereotypical cliches, if you will, that typically it's not uncommon to see Black folks play basketball. It's not uncommon for folks to have their kids and go shop. That is not an uncommon thing. And so I wanted a level of relatability while understanding that, yes, there is the necessity that, you know, well, Black folks aren't the only ones who play basketball, but I want people to find themselves in the book, latch on. And when they find themselves in the book and latch on, I want them to be able to, you know, because relatability and likability all ties into the ability to be able to receive the message. And so great job for her because she, you know, she's in tune with a lot of stuff. So
yeah, definitely great job. We just wanted to kind of like talk about it a little bit because, you know, sometimes when it comes with Black authors and as we are exploring different authors, we are learning their different styles, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So was it so then I did want to go back to the beginning of the book before and when he said you gave me life, now I am here for who knows how many years.
Yes.
I wanted to say I love the way you started it off, but then with this you said how many years, but then you also talked about how much we could do within a day.
Yeah.
You compared like how far they'll go, but you showed like in one day it could prepare them for years to come. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure. Yeah, so I had a Kirkus review and a few other reviews too, and they kind of kicked me in the shins for the who knows how many years because they called it rather ominous and more so the negative aspect of, well, we want our kids to live a long life, but if we look at the reality of things, not all kids are living long lives. Some kids have very short lives. And so I wanted that to be something that I hit people directly with the reality that time is something that we don't really evaluate until we're at the funeral.
Okay.
So that's why I hit it with that. Secondly, I wanted to take the reader throughout the day of so many things that could occur because you can play ball, you can go shopping, you can learn how to cook, you can learn how. Yeah, you can do all that in a day. And just imagine if you did that every day. You know,
That's what, yeah.
yeah. And so the more you do that, the more you bond with your children, and the more you create life lessons and put dots on their brain so that when life shoves a pencil in their hand, they will have dots to connect.
This is kind of moving forward. Sorry, it's not a great transition, but it's I don't have children, so this is kind of a question for both of you. I've been thinking a lot during COVID about how to explain difficult topics like COVID or like the election or, what was happening the other day to younger kids. And I think that goes along with this story of, you know, keeping it real with them but explaining it on their level. I was wondering if you could explain, talk about how you talk about this with younger children.
Well, I just be direct, because, okay, I'll give you prime example. I have the book in front of me, but I do have the cover. Impatient Patience is another book that I wrote. And with that, little 8-year-old Patience has been impatient since 3. Obviously, it's a play on words. And so in the book, she hurts herself because she's riding so fast on her bike. She misses the hop, breaks her leg, and now she becomes a patient and has no choice but to wait. Another author friend of mine, her child, they read this live, and I love their interaction. Her name is author Ren Lowe, and she read that live, and her daughter was like, well, I don't like the way that it made me feel because Patience hurt herself. Me, I was like, success. Yeah. Because most the lessons that stick with you the most are the ones that have an emotional effect to where it's like, I don't like that lesson. And so you remember how you felt about it. And I always want children to feel free to express themselves. Often we want them to be proper and we want them to box their feelings into things that fit our ego and things that we want to hear instead of letting them just harness their raw emotions and letting them tell us how they really feel about the election, about this feeling, about maybe something that we as parents may not be doing correctly. That's the one thing I hated as a kid is this: a child should be seen and not heard. I'm writing another book affecting that, or talking about that. No, we want them to speak out, because when we silence their voices, we do such a detrimental and a negative effect on their development, to where when something really is going on that we really should know about, they're to be seen and not heard, and they don't speak out about the traumas that they experience, and it's just a weird thing. So I urge you that when you do have children, my books are about creating lessons to teach them. I often heard this: there's no manual for parenting. Yeah, because we shield them from so many things and create so many wonderful fluff books where everything is good, and we wait till they get to the bridge of trouble. And on that bridge, I knew this was going to happen. Let's talk. No, let's address it now, so we can address that proverbial elephant in the room. And because I have lessons to teach you, I've got this library of books and other authors' books, and they're uncomfortable, but you need to know so that you can be more comfortable in what you know is coming.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I was telling Aisha, it made me think of this because my family friend, they have a son, he's 5 or 6, and so when they were explaining what Corona was to him, they were just saying, oh, it's this scary monster, so we need to stay in the house. Nah. But then his mother got it, and so then he was terrified because he was like, the monster's inside my house, and they had to backtrack and explain, no, it's just a sickness, she's gonna be okay. And instead of being real with him, like they understand a lot more than you think.
Yeah, way more. The children of the future will always be smarter than the predecessors because of the access where they get information. Yeah. And we often restrict them from what they should be learning because of how we learned, not the same 2 generations. So yes, I agree.
This was probably one of my favorite talks. I've learned so much, and it's like I want to know more, and I want to read more of your books because you're hitting it on the head, and it's easy. It's a really easy read. And like you said, when Rebecca asked you, was it for the kid or for the adult? It's for us, because
Yeah, absolutely.
it's for me, because I want to read this to them, and now I want to share with my friends, because this, you can do a lot in a day. You can do a lot, and you can do harm without doing it in a day.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we are at time. I want to thank you for joining us today. And for our viewers, we want to know more about your book. So what we want to do is we're going to put your books, we're working on our brick and mortar for the Rose Cafe location to be announced, but we want to definitely have your books in our cafe.
Yes, I'd love to.
And we have them right now. We have them up on our site. We have different book lists, and we have a list for all the authors we've spoken to. So your book is right on there for the viewers to look through your books on Bookshop.
Thank you. Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. And I'm still writing more. I'm praying. So I'm on this train. I have no intention on getting off, because I want families to connect. I want adults to connect with their children and even connect with their parents, because grandparents, they didn't do it right when they were younger, and they're living vicariously through how the grandchildren and the moms and dads, like, when I was a kid, you didn't do, they don't understand that things have gotten better for the grandparents. So I just love this experience and just ready to keep going.
Well, we will talk to you soon. We're thinking about having a book fair in the spring. So definitely want to reach out to you, see if that's something you want to collaborate with us for on the south side of Chicago. And it's up there.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
so
Brown.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys take care.
Bye, you too.